there's not a good solution for this. One of the reasons is that we own the property, but it's the family that owns the gravestones. Most people don't realize that the church, that we don't actually own, these. In fact, this grave right here was worked on about 3 years ago. The cross was tilted back toward this way at about an 8-degree, 10-degree angle. And so the family hired them to come in and do he was the conservator, thank you. Had done work at Madison's graveyard and also in the Washington graveyard, so he was pretty well qualified. Great guy. But tell you one other story.
All right.
This graveyard, we have an alley behind us, and the market square and the government buildings are about here. But this part here was added in 1959. And so if you imagine the graveyard extending beyond that, back about 10 years ago, they were doing some archaeological work in Market Square, and they found a number of bodies. They said, well, they would have been part of St. George's. So they were reburied here. And in 2002, and they had a ceremony using the 1662 prayer book for them and gave them proper honors. And so there are literally people buried all over here. We don't know who they are and where they are. These stones don't necessarily go under where the people are buried.
Okay.
I can tell you that. And people, we found when we were doing renovation, we put a sprinkler system in, and the water line is over across the street, so we had to bring it across the street. When they were digging under the street, they found bodies.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, there was quite a discussion going on, we'll say it nicely, between the construction company and the police, because anytime you find a body, it's a potential murder scene. Well, I don't think so, but I mean, they're going back that far. But these two ladies were going at it, and I said, well, I'll figure out what you want to do. I'll be in the church. You come in and tell me what you want to do. Well, the police took the body, and they realized that it's not something new, and so brought it back in, and we actually reinterred it here in an unmarked grave there. But there was actually another one that was found, and the construction company said, we don't want to go through all this again. So they left the person there where he was, and it actually should be, because that's where they were interred. So, safe to say is that they're probably they were in the 1930s during the Depression and the New Deal period. There was a lot of work done to study local history. It's part of the way to keep people working. And the studies that came out from the time indicated there probably were burials here long before Fredericksburg became a city in 1728. So long before that, there were people buried here. So this is an older cemetery than many of us even realize.
Wow.
But it's a very peaceful spot, even though you can't read all the graves.
Well, we appreciate you telling us about it.
Yeah,
Very nice.
A lot of people come here and they don't ever go to the church because a year ago I had to give a tour. September of 2013, and I realized I go across here twice a day. My office is up here. I don't know who these people are. It's like going in we're your neighborhood, and you don't know any of your neighbors. So I undertook a little bit of a study to find out who some of these people were, because we didn't have records. A lot of churches only limit burials to people that actually go here. But that wasn't true here. Mm-hmm. Or if they were members, we don't have records of them. So it's kind of interesting to find out who some of these people were. A lot of infants, or a lot of children, 20 years and under, predominate. Most of the graves here are between 1800 and 1850.
Wow, very
the
nice.
time where we don't have our records.
Yes.
That's unfortunate. I'll mention one other grave. John Paul Jones's brother is buried here. You can see the original grave here, and they put a more permanent one here, 1774. John Paul Jones's brother, William Paul, was a tailor in Fredericksburg, and he died in 1774. And John Paul Jones was here from about that period, maybe a year or so. It was at a time where he had previously killed someone in the West Indies, so he was kind of a marked man. And there's a story, which we don't think is true. It's a neat story, but it just doesn't quite fit. That John Paul Jones came in here, and his name was John Paul, and he came in the graveyard, and you notice, okay, John Jones over there, interesting name. John Jones, John Paul Jones. So some people think that he got his name from the St. George graveyard. We don't think that. There are historians here that know a lot more than I do that absolutely quash that kind of rumor, but it is kind of neat. But William Paul apparently had, John Paul Jones was frustrated by getting his estate cleared.
And that was this grave right over here?
Yeah, yeah, so that's been there 70 years. So that would, when William Paul died, this grave would have been here 22 years. It's one of actually pretty well, preserved. This one's got a kind of a dark color, and they say that came about from the Civil War. I don't know if that's true or not. It makes a kind of neat story, but literally, they say bodies were piled up here. The graveyard was a mess, so it was, it saw the brunt of the Civil War as well as the battlefields did. If you notice inside the pews, I should have mentioned this, the pews are original. They were not taken up in the Civil War. The one reason is the Yankees couldn't get them out. The church had just been built, so they were strong. The Baptist church wasn't so lucky down here. Their pews got taken out, and a lot of use for firewood and that kind of thing. But our pews are original.
Oh, very nice.
And so yeah, that's great to have original pews and all like that. And there are still a lot of little plaques on them representing parishioners. And I did a study a couple of years ago who these people are. I love looking at plaques because I wonder why were they put there? Who were they? So I've done some work along that.
Well, this has been a pleasure,
Well,
and
good.
I greatly appreciate
Sure.
the information.
It's interesting y'all are doing this. So when did you start?